like we would be reading the back of the toothpaste tube, or I mean, like it was
anything that comes
could
in
not
front of
sit
you.
quietly in one. Readers, for example, don't read the same type of book all their life.
You're right.
Like they could love a certain genre,
Yeah.
but sometimes they need something more
just to
as well.
break off the mold.
Exactly. Most people, look at books as what they need to read right now. या जिनके बारे में अब सुना है, let's find that book and download it or buy it and read that book. So your reading journey begins after that. What are you going to read next? What has this kind of compelled you to know more about? Or forget this. ये अभी एक ये हो गया. Now what next?
What next? Before moving ahead, would like to bring your attention on a wonderful new product, a reusable notebook from NARA. It's a 100% tree-free, waterproof and tear-proof notebook which can be used endlessly for years together. I think it's a great step towards a sustainable future and a new step in note-taking. I have been personally using this notebook and have been able to save 6 to 8 pages every day. If you are interested in knowing more about this product, the link for the product is in the description below. And like we are here to talk about your story in terms of being in the book industry, which is so much a part of printing. I think books would be the oldest, one of the oldest, if I may say, in terms of a print output that would have come.
Correct.
And then we are here to know about how your journey started in this industry. Are you all set?
Yeah, all set. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about where you were born and how you kind of got into this space.
Okay. So I was born in Bombay, in Mulund, and I studied there, and I also did my bachelor's in English literature. And while I was studying my diploma in journalism, I also started doing my master's in literature as well. And I realized that I had two paths that I thought worked for me, that would be where my career would be, and that was either journalism or editing.
Okay.
And I mean, we were very avid readers, my sister and I, and we continue to be very avid readers. And we grew up with like this crazy appetite for reading, not just books but anything, like we would be reading the back of the toothpaste tube, or I mean, like it was
anything that comes in front of you.
Could not sit quietly in one place. Like if we were having breakfast and mom would be like, there was absolutely no TV allowed back then, but she would not allow us to take our storybooks to sit and read, and then we'd be looking around like kuch to padna, and we'd be reading the calendar, and like it was just this hunger for reading, that kind of made me realize that I wanted to do more of this. I wanted to read, and I was a self-appointed writer in the family, and I read really terrible poetry. And so when I was in school and when I was in college, I realized that maybe journalism would be the path that I would choose, and that's how it kind of started. And I realized that editing was also quite my forte at the time, and I wanted to learn that. I wanted to invest more time and effort becoming a better editor. So I enrolled in a course in Delhi and studied editing, and I also learned editing to a deadline while I was working in the newspapers.
Okay.
So with these things under my belt, I found that maybe more than being a journalist, I could use my skills to get back to books, which was just something that kept calling out to me. So I started working as a freelance manuscript editor, and set up my website, sent out, like when authors would connect with me, I would do a sample edit for them. And at that time, Delhi wasn't that open to working with freelancers who were working remotely. So I wasn't, working with big names at the time, but I got plenty of budding authors. I got plenty of authors who were writers who were experts in their field, and who wanted to, bring out books, either self-published books, on their experiences, say as business persons or as nutritionists, and I got a wealth of knowledge because of what I was reading. Like it was offered to me on
Exposing
a platter,
yourself to
and I had to
these
read up.
budding authors.
Correct,
Yeah,
and I had to read up to understand, how I could make this better.
true.
So I completely enjoyed that, and by that time I had met Mithil, who's my husband, and we both run Trilogy together.
Lovely.
And he's a wildlife photographer.
Nice.
He was a full-time wildlife photographer at the time, and I wanted to, if possible, get back to writing with him. So our whole idea was to focus on Indian nature writing and start a publishing house. So we decided to go to Delhi to study publishing. And while we stayed there, we visited the many wonderful bookshops that they have over there. And we realized कि ऐसे books तो बॉम्बे में नहीं मिलते हैं.
अच्छा,
हाँ,
ऐसा भी है?
ऐसा भी है.
मतलब
So this
tell us
is
the
like
difference.
this is about 15 years ago.
Okay.
So we were in Delhi and we went to these lovely bookshops. Two that I genuinely still love, Fact and Fiction, which unfortunately closed down, run by this lovely gentleman, Mr. Ajit Singh. And what a wonderful collection of books, And another bookshop called Timeless Art Book Studio, which was in South Extension in Delhi, which only specialized in coffee table books. And
Okay.
I have to tell you this, it isn't just the books that were there. उनके शॉप में ना एक हार्ली डेविडसन भी था, एक 4-poster बेड था, एक बड़ा डाइनिंग टेबल था, and there were these lovely Buddha statues, and it was the most at that time the most life-changing experience in a bookshop that I had ever had. And that's when we realized, wait a minute, what's wrong with Bombay? Why don't we have this, this wonderful attention to the books, diverse collection of books on philosophy, on science, on nature writing, which we hadn't found so much in Bombay, and of course, when we thought about coming back to our idea of starting a publishing house, we thought iske liye to Delhi mein rehna padega, because that's where the ecosystem is, and that wasn't a move we could make at the time. And we thought the next best thing is to get back to being the readers that we are. And Mithil enjoys reading too. Like, he had a wonderful collection of nature writing, which is now part of the core collection of the books that we have in the library now.
Lovely.
So when we came back to Bombay, we said, let's think about starting a consultancy that curates better collections for libraries in the city, that curates a better collection for bookshops in the city, and gets these wonderful books in for readers in Bombay. And while we were setting this up, we were like so motivated by this idea, because by that time we were known in our social circle as people who could find interesting books, for family, for friends. And that's when we decided that while we're consulting on this, why don't we set up what we are talking about? We're talking about a better collection. Why don't we show people what we're talking about? So the hunt started for a space where we could showcase this collection that we were constantly, imagining were in our hands. And then found a place in Lower Parel, in Raghuvanshi Mills.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, it's a beautiful space. Yeah. It had trees all around.
Yeah, Raghuvanshi Mills is a pretty nice.
Yeah, it was a wonderful place, like full of light, And that's when we started Trilogy in 2014. It was a library and a bookshop and a literary event space as well.
Okay.
And when we started, we got a lot of people who would come in, wondering what is curated, like what does that mean, And when they saw our collection, they realized that we had really invested a lot of time and effort in selecting the books that were there. So it isn't that, that we don't have the new books, that we don't keep what are popular. It is the fact that we also have books that are little known, that are, say, from the publisher's backlist or their mid list, or that are from authors who one has heard about but has not seen their entire collection in one place, for example. And readers, for example, don't read the same type of book all their life. You
You're
know,
right.
like they could love a certain genre,
Yeah.
but sometimes they need something more
just to
as well.
break off the mold.
Exactly. Like, or maybe you're reading like this high, like action thriller which takes place in Egypt, and suddenly you're like, I think I want to know more about Egypt right now, and give me a good book, on the history of Egypt, like what's been happening over there, you
Right.
know, and that's how a reader's horizons widen, right? I mean,
Right.
when they deep dive into
Correct.
new places where a book takes them to newer
Correct.
places as
Correct.
well. So our whole curation was based on the fact that we want to have books that are not necessarily what everyone is talking about, but are fantastic books and will find a reader of their own. We wanted to cater to different readers, and keep in mind that that their reading will also evolve, and we need to have books as they evolve, in their reading. And authors as well. I mean, we wanted to not just have what is the latest book by a certain author, but try to have as many of the books that some really great masters of writing have brought out. So with that in mind, when people would walk in, we would take them around, show them some of these unusual books that we had, and well, that's how it started. Then we kind of kept at it. We shifted from Lower Parel. We're now in Bandra, and this year
Was it a strategic move or?
Oh no, our lease was up for renewal, and by that time, Mithil's mom, who had this place in Bandra, she was running her garment factory. From there, she had retired, and the place was vacant. And we decided, let's shift closer home.
Yeah.
Commute was, really getting to us, and at that point, we were working 7 days a week. So, we really thought, okay, we need to now, take a step back, and we shifted lock, stock and barrel to Bandra.
And Bandra is a more happening place as far as culture and art is concerned than Lower Parel.
Of course.
So Lower Parel has its own beauty. I'm not trying to belittle that
not at all. Not at all. And for us at that point, Lower Parel, we consciously chose that place because a cross section of the city comes there for work.
True.
You have your financial, your legal, your headquarters of so many
banks.
Yeah, so many companies. Yeah, and so many corporates over there. So you also get to meet a lot of interesting people who you otherwise perhaps couldn't have met. So Lower Parel was fantastic, and but like I said,
nothing like Bandra.
Yeah, also very close to home.
That's an added advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lovely. So I mean, I'm sure many of our viewers would be, thinking book industry today with the advent of digitization,
Right.
Kindle, ebooks, audibles. So how is it? How difficult? How challenging is it to run the business? Is it challenging, or has your business grown over the years?
Oh, business has grown for sure. There is no challenge per se. Like we do not feel that ebooks or audiobooks eat into print sales in that way. Let me explain. Many people are consuming all kinds of formats right now. Yeah. So we know people who would read the e-book of a certain the e-format of a book when they're flying somewhere, perhaps on the flight when they're traveling. It makes complete sense to have a lighter weight with them. And there are people who would listen to the book while traveling to work, or while they're
walking
in the gym,
or
while they're walking, and who would still want a print book for their leisure reading when they're at home, or
on a vacation, just kind of chilling out.
Yeah. So I was reading somewhere that people are now called hybrid readers for doing this.
Oh, that's nice.
So for us, from what we can tell, as long as a person is reading, is investing in the act of reading,
the habit of reading,
perfectly fine. And like after a while, people kind of get need a break from the screen, and will always then want to come back.
And that physical feel of flipping pages, I think nothing can beat it. And I think I'm also a hybrid reader because I usually read on Kindle. I mean the e-version of Kindle, and I also have a couple of books which I want to read. Whenever I go to a bookstore, I just pick them, and whenever I have time, I read. So I think as you rightly said, there is a mix of formats that
Correct.
people, rather than the industry just going towards digital, I think there's a mix of formats.
Absolutely. And there's been so much that publishing houses have been doing to make books look more attractive. I mean, the cover art is off the charts. Like, it's just beautiful. The way some books look, they're irresistible,
And I think there is one more point in terms of a show-off quotient. You go to many offices and they've got this very nicely stacked books in their racks, and whether I'm hoping that they would have read, but then it has a certain show off. But if it's in a Kindle, you don't even know.
Sure.
Because if I walk into someone's cabin and I see the kind of books that he reads, I have a general sense of what kind of person this is.
Right.
But if there is a Kindle, I wouldn't know anything about him.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's also also shown in the fact that if you follow some Instagram accounts, you will find that the beauty of the book is as celebrated as the story in it. You have these color coded shelves, these books that are arranged according to color, these books that are arranged according to the spine, they
True.
make a sort of poem if you read the spines.
Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of readers also take great pleasure in that.
Yeah.
So there is, like I said, there's always going to be space, for all formats, of the book. So it's not like one challenging the other. It's just a matter of convenience, what works well at that time. In terms of audiobooks, for example, a lot of books are made more fun because of the person reading it out. Like if it's someone like a Stephen Fry and you love hearing, the way he speaks, you will enjoy hearing,
True.
his non-fiction book
True.
as well.
True.
A lot of children are also taking to audiobooks because maybe they're too young to read the entire book, so audiobooks work for them as well.
True.
So yeah, it's all, like I said, it's a matter of what works at that time, and there's space for all of
And
it.
I think as a bookseller, as long as people read, you are happy.
Absolutely.
Because the
Yeah.
industry is growing, it is moving forward.
Correct, exactly. Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Lovely. I mean, in terms of, I want to understand your association with the print industry, in terms of how important is print in a book?
You mean the paper quality and the
Paper quality, the binding, the print quality, the size, the font, the various aspects. I mean, does print really matter in terms of the book sale?
Oh, absolutely. There are times when a book does not get picked up purely because of font size, So in some cases, we have seen that the same book comes out in a larger format. Font size is brilliant, people can read it. And then the same book comes out a few months later in a smaller size, and the font is more cramped, the margins are narrower, and the line space is narrower as well, and it's more difficult to read. And this is usually, the book has done so well that a lot of people are talking about it. There's a second or third wave of readers coming to the book, and when they see this in front of them, and you will no longer have access to that larger size book then, and
Is it related to cutting costs?
I guess so. I mean, I
Okay.
guess it makes sense to print a smaller book rather than, make room for the large print size margins.
So you get your name with the larger size.
Sort
Once
of.
the book has become famous, then you can probably make do
Correct.
with the
Make
smaller
a
version.
mass market
Mass,
paperback available, and then that person does not feel comfortable taking that, that book because they can't read that. And also sometimes what happens is that the jacket of the book, in terms of print, if it's a white dust jacket, is likely to suffer more damages in transit. So what happens is that by the time it reaches the bookshelves, it shows wear and tear and does not look as pristine as a new book should, and then a person will not pick it up, like especially if they want to give it as a gift to someone. That happens a lot with business books. Like if you see, there's certain books that are considered popular for a business book, white, black, red,
Right.
And white and black show a lot of damage. Like black will show a lot of
Peeling off.
Correct, or dust.
Dust
You know, if it's
attracting,
not, if it's not kept properly, if it's not handled well, then black will show that as well. So for these reasons, some books get rejected right at the. I mean, even though it may be a great book inside, font is fantastic, print is great, the paper quality is wonderful, but the cover will show wear and tear, or dust jackets. You know, when they tear a bit in transit, you know, person would not feel good buying those, which is why we are very strict about the quality of the book when it comes in.
When it comes into your
has to
store.
be absolutely pristine.
Yeah.
So
They get the value for what they pay.
yeah. We wouldn't want people. I mean, you know,
Your
to
customers
keep
to
a
get
damaged
something.
book.
Yeah. So in India, what's a bestseller like? I mean, in terms of what is a number when you say that, okay, it's a bestseller? You hear this term quite often.
So I believe it's between 10 to 15,000. I don't know if that's changed in recent times.
Okay.
But for the past few years, like when book sales cross that in English,
Okay.
that would be considered a bestseller.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So anyone who's selling about 10,000 copies of his or her title is considered to be a bestseller.
Considered that. Yeah.
And how is the trend in India compared to the global scenario or Mumbai with regards to the other cities like Delhi or Bangalore in terms of reading?
Oh, in terms of reading, well, I wouldn't know the numbers per se.
No, I mean in terms of the trend. I mean, do people in this city read more, or in Delhi they read more, in India they read more or less?
So reading happens across India, but in many different genres as well.
Okay.
So let's say
True.
that if you just take three cities, say Delhi, Bangalore and Bombay, you will find different genres getting more attention, more play in different cities. You will find so Bombay has always been slotted as the business book district, you know,
Correct,
and
being the financial
self-help.
capital.
Correct, yeah. But so much more does well over here, you know, like and Delhi has been slotted as a place where political memoirs or biographies do more better than say in Bombay. And Bangalore has sort of been the place where fiction does really well, but so does history, so does books on politics.
Culture, probably.
Yeah. So I think, but that's kind of showing a shift over the years, at least in the last couple of years, maybe because of COVID, and also because of the huge access that readers now have to different genres, like translations, for example. Like there's been an increase in the number of translated books that are now coming out, translated from Indian languages, Indian regional languages to English, or from international languages to English, who have been winning accolades, you know, across the world. So I think now we're seeing a rise in this across the cities. It isn't just, and there have been a lot of breakout self-help books or books about business biographies, for example, like books about a certain industry or a certain company's growth, which are doing well across across these cities.
Yeah.
You know, it isn't just like say the Netflix book. Or you know, books about
Dhirubhai Ambani or someone.
Or you know, books by Brené Brown, you know, who writes about courage, who writes about bravery. So these are books that are now, you know, going across the cities. I mean, it isn't just, you know, limited to one. But having said that, each city does have its own character.
Yeah.
But no one city is less than the other. I think they all have a huge appetite for reading. I wouldn't say reading has been more or less in any one of these.
Yeah, I think, you know, while we were having a conversation before we started this, you know, reading is that form of engagement, if not an art, which, you know, once you read, your mind expands to a form which it will never retain back to the original size.
Right.
I mean, it imparts so much of knowledge and wisdom, and your level of thinking goes up multiple fold than where you were standing.
Correct.
So reading has so much of importance in each one's life. I mean, I picked up reading much later in life, and I was very glad to know that I'm going to be getting to meet you, who's a bookseller and especially into curated books.
Right.
Probably you're the one who helps people pick books, and someone who wants
Right.
to learn about a new subject or a new topic or something special.
Right.
So the Trilogy is the place where people, I hope I pronounced it right. Trilogy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
Trilogy
right.
is the place where people should go, and I only got to know that we did not have curated bookshops in Bombay as much as there are in Delhi.
As much as there are in Delhi, yes. We now have a few in Bombay as well. But the whole idea of a curated bookshop is also that it does evolve over time.
True, true.
Like you will not find the same collection a few months later even.
True.
So,
Yeah, that depends on your consumer and what kind of people are walking in,
Correct.
what kind of questions they have.
Correct.
So having said that, what is the challenges that you have faced in the last 10 years of running your business? I mean, in terms of the good episodes, something which were not very pleasant, or success or failures, or if I may put it that way.
So one of the success, what I would call success, is this idea of taking our curation out of the bookshop as well. So before the pandemic, we used to do these pop-up bookshops, pop-up bookstalls,
Okay.
with a few wonderful collaborators, one of whom, which we genuinely miss, was Godrej Culture Labs, which is in Vikhroli,
Okay.
which was in Vikhroli. And what they would do is they would have these wonderful monthly sessions where they would invite the most interesting people. They would have a theme. Say it is about the city, it is about water, or it was about land, for example. And they would invite a wonderful set of people who were experts in various like stakeholders and experts in the field, who could explain what was happening at the moment, and kind of enlighten people about what really was meant by, say, land issues, or what was happening in the city's architectural scene. And what we were invited to do, was to set up a curated pop-up bookstall at that
Depending
venue.
on the theme.
Yeah, at that venue. And we'd be given about like a month's notice for this.
Okay.
And we would go about looking at all publishers' catalogs and small indie presses, and find books that were relevant and take them there. Like we've taken, like, say, and we've done such curated events across the city for various, in various venues. And we had the most interesting conversations and fun doing the pop-up bookstalls for Godrej. And so what would happen is, we'd go with these books, people would hear the talk, they would come out, fully,
rejuvenated, or at a different level of thought.
To know more about the subject.
True.
And there would not be one or two, but there'd be at least 100 or 150 different titles on that subject.
Wow.
And allied topics as well. So, when we saw the way people would react to a curated collection, and still have the same experience, that we would in our own bookshop, we realized, okay, this is very fulfilling. This is what we are meant to do.
You're doing something very special.
Yeah.
It's not like a, run of the mill, just having.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, since you haven't been to the bookshop, let me just give you like a small idea of what it's like. So, we don't usually share too many pictures of our bookshop online. The idea being that when you enter our space, you encounter it at that moment for yourself. And like I said, the collection keeps changing over time. So you don't come with a preconceived notion of what you're going to see over there.
Okay.
So when you enter the space, the books that are there are at that moment, for you. We don't overload the shelves with multiple copies of a book. Maximum you'll see is 2 or 3 copies of a certain book. We don't have those thappis of 25-50 copies, which are wonderful, I mean, for bookshops that have them. But because we're trying to give as much a diverse range of books,
customized,
we cannot have that space for so many copies.
Sure.
So when you come in, you see a multiple range of books in various genres. There's, like I said, nature writing, there's travel, there's science, there's books on art and photography and photo books. Of course, there's fiction as well, and the classics, and books on poetry, and not just books with poems in them, but on poetry, on writing poetry, on poets, books on philosophy and ideas and essays and history, of course, and graphic novels, and we don't just have cookbooks, we have books on the history of food, for example. So once you come in and you see these books, like you kind of have to engage with the books that are in front of you, and that kind of allows like you to find a book you perhaps did not know existed. Like you could be looking for a certain book on, say, okay, I want to go to Goa, let's find books on Goa, and what you end up seeing beside it are the history of cycles, for example, like how did cycles evolve over time. Or you see a book about a certain naturalist who has been studying a certain species of bird, for example, and about maybe their memoirs as well, and it may somehow tie in with the
connect
state
with
of
your inner
mind
self
that you're in right at that moment. So so for us, that experience is something that lends to a better book buying experience or a book browsing experience, when you don't know what you're going to encounter next, and you don't know how your mind is going to react to that, and how that kind of triggers your curiosity, your intellectual curiosity about the world that we are in.
True.
So and when we see people react to a 6x10 foot space in another venue with a similar collection of books, and that triggers their curiosity as well, we realize, yes, like this is what we're meant to do.
So nice.
Yeah.
Nice way of putting it. And I'm earning to visit your store, and hopefully I do it soon.
I hope
I would love to come there and have a look.
Yeah.
Probably very soon.
Lovely.
Yeah. And on the challenges side, this was a good thing. Something where you found it difficult.
So something that we have, which we would call a challenge, is that we haven't been able to connect with the corporates and the schools in the way that we hoped that they would take us. So we have a very, if I may call it myself, a very lovely collection of books for children. And our books for children are not limited to only what's popular, but books across ideas and subjects from various publishers, including really small indie presses as well. And we take great pride in representing some Indian publishers who may not publish as many books as, say, the bigger publishers do, but whose works are always relevant, like books on Indian modern art, for example, for children, which you may not find a lot of, generally speaking. So what normally happens, if I may just take a minute, is that we have people who are decision makers in their school, in the corporates, who come over to the bookshop, enjoy the experience and want to replicate some of this for their own school or their own office. And but what happens then is that somewhere down the line then you're kind of just seen as a vendor of books, and then you're not given that access to the space that you need to be able to replicate that experience again in their own premises.
Correct.
So so the way we work is, the way we over the years, what we have realized is that two things are important when you step out, okay, when you take your book collection elsewhere, is that the person you're working with, is it fun working with them? Are they easy to work with? Do they listen? Do they understand? Their intentions must be wonderful, but do they understand what your needs are when you go there?
I'm assuming you mean connection at a deeper level.
Also, like not having too many, not red tape. My point is like, deeper level, of course, but do they understand where we come from, and can they, if they want to replicate the same experience, will they help us, enable that? And B, the second thing is, what kind of interaction are we going to get when we take the collection over there? Is that going to be fun? Is that going to be interesting? Is that worth the physical effort of packing up boxes and boxes of books and taking it over there? So these are the two things we keep in mind. And so if you when you go to a corporate and the person who has invited you there has seen your shop, has seen the collection and has said, please bring this, something similar, we're celebrating a certain event, or we would like our employees to partake of this collection, etc. But then they give you like space at the back of the canteen, for example, where the office is not going to come. They're only going to be there for a limited period of time and then rush back, for example. Or when the school calls you on a day when the parents are not going to be there. The children are going to come and take a look at the books, but they're not going to have the purchasing power. And neither can you talk to each child and explain, which book you would, want them to take a closer look at. And then that effort then
now I understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah. So for those reasons, so that in our experience, therefore has been a challenge. Has been like a lot of people have come and have expressed an interest in having us over. But then if their intention is that same replication, then we need to have like a better conversation, a better cooperation perhaps, together, and we haven't been able to do that yet.
I'm sure it will happen soon, and with your intent and the way you're doing what you're doing, I'm sure it will happen. And the way, probably as you rightly said, Mumbai, you like amongst the first stores in Mumbai to sell curated books. And the concept, I never knew about curated bookstores.
Right.
General bookstore, Crossword was my place to go. I really didn't think of a big bookstore differently until you told me that curated bookstores exist. And there are bookstores especially on military history, military,
in
something in Delhi. You were mentioning.
One of the most fascinating experiences walking into this small little shop in the I don't recall what it was called, but it was some metro market, like the metro station is there and there's this place inside the subway. CP
is that's where the metro station is.
House correct. There, the lovely place, small, packed with all kinds of books. I picked up a book from there. It was about ants, and ants have this army ants. It was about the use of insects in warfare. Over the years, a person had put together, I'm forgetting his name right now, what was it called? Something. It was about the history of the use of insects in warfare. What a fascinating book. I picked it up. And it had these lovely ants on the cover, and I was like, bhai, this is some book. Seriously. So this is what I mean by I am not someone who would be interested in reading about warfare. But give me a book that, talks about the history of how, nature has been used, in this. And I am sort of interested in finding out a little about it.
For me, it is strategy. I like reading about strategy, knowing about, why certain things have happened. I don't think coincidence exists. जो भी हुआ है, there is some reason and someone has structurally done it. Whether we accept it or not, but it has happened over a period of time structurally. तो वो जो perspective है, उसके बारे में जानना मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है. And if there are contents on it, if there are books written on it, I would love to. I never even thought such things existed. For me, Kindle was all the place. Google में search करो, this topic I want to read. Get the book.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So most people, look at books as what they need to read right now. या जिनके बारे में अब सुना है. Let's find that book and download it or buy it and read that book. So your reading journey begins after that. What are you going to read next? What has this kind of compelled you to know more about? Or forget this. ये अभी एक ये हो गया. Now what next?
What next?
So when that thought kind of gets you thinking independently, not because someone has said this is a great book, but because you feel like, okay, I think
it has to trigger some emotion within you.
Or some interest, or you kind of you choose what you read next, not because it's on a list somewhere,
Correct.
or
Correct.
because someone has said it's a fantastic book.
Correct.
That is when your reader's journey really takes off.
Yeah, you mature as a reader. You kind of get to the, and as I was saying earlier, for me this phrase has always been, a person who reads a book, his mind has expanded to a different level.
Right.
So I think reading is one of the best known habits a man can get. I got it very late at 22.
Right.
So I feel, and I push my children to read as much as they can, and I always recommend my team and people around me to read.
Right.
I mean, even if it's a page, try to read as much as you can. It's really helpful.
Right.
And it will widen your thought process, broaden your horizon.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So is there anything that I should have asked you, and this is so much a part of your being, your business, Trilogies, have I pronounced it right?
Yeah,
Trilogy.
absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great.
The existence of Trilogy, or anything, I mean, in terms of it was a question that is so much core to you.
I think you had actually asked us a question. क्या था वो, मैंने Mithil and I were like, हाँ ये बोलते हैं. Oh my God, wait, let me try to remember what your question was. Yeah, I can't recall right now. But yeah, okay. So I think it was about what you would tell someone if they were starting off.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we would really tell people, is that you have to be patient. You have to. It takes time. You have to be agile. You have to be nimble. And when it comes to running a small business, you should be able to take risks. You should be able to foresee the next step, and accept that maybe you haven't judged that correctly, and move on from that experience, learn from that experience. It isn't enough to just look at what people are doing right now, but to see in the future, like 4 steps ahead, what you should be preparing for next. So which is where the patience comes in, because what you are planning for may not happen for a while more, and you should be able to sustain yourself for that period of time till when what you are kind of seeing is coming up in the future actually happens, which you prepare for. So for example, like as a like I was saying, the collection keeps changing. You may perhaps see the same books on the shelf the next time you come, but a lot of it may have changed by then. So when young people sort of come in, and they express this interest of running the bookshop, or starting something of their own, or even publishing houses that sometimes drop in to see how their books are doing, what we would really, really, really love to share with them, the experience or the feedback that we have gathered from readers, not just our experience but other readers sharing their experience, is that it really in this day and age, it really works well to accept feedback and work on it quickly.
True.
So when it comes to publishing, for example, like we were talking about before the recording started, and also because we still hope that we'll be publishers one day, is that you really need to be able to get feedback from readers about the books.
Correct.
About the quality of the print, like we were talking about, and the binding, and work on it so that the next batch of books do not suffer the same.
Get better than what it was earlier.
Yeah. And when it comes to book selling, it is really important that not only do you really understand the book that you have, but you also understand the reader that you are, talking to.
What is the biggest challenge in selling a book?
The biggest challenge in selling a book?
I mean, in terms of, do you face any?
Well, if the book is not right for that reader, then that'll
So, do you have to take a special effort in terms of identifying the book and the reader?
Yes. So, but sometimes it can be a very interesting experience. Like there's this book we have Gosh, what's it called? How to see a painting. What paintings say? Yeah. It's a rather expensive book. It's by this international publisher called Taschen, and must be around maybe 5,000, 6,000 rupees. And we sold 2 copies so far. One to this avid art collector and who is an artist himself, and one to an absolute newcomer to art, who took this as his first book, to understand art. So to kind of use this as an example, you don't know who the reader is.
Correct. So there are 2 different segments.
Ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Like one who knows most of these artworks and probably seen it in person,
A professional.
in museums. Yeah,
And this
in
is a
museums.
beginner.
And this is a young guy who just wants to know and who's going to use this as sort of like a springboard, to learn more about art and to improve himself,
Lovely.
So you don't know the reader until you speak with them. You don't know the book until you understand what's in it, until you take a look yourself. So so when we read that question of yours, we're like, ये बहुत important है.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
nice. Then thanks for sharing. Lovely conversation, I must say. I wouldn't want to stretch it too long. I'll take it ahead in terms of the last 2 questions which we have for our guests to know about this podcast. I mean, I was told about you by Ramu
Yes.
of Print Week,
Yeah.
and it's a pleasure to have you. I have to thank him. He's always suggesting wonderful names.
Yeah.
We had Sana from Tries, the
Yes, I
earlier
heard
guest.
her podcast was wonderful. Yeah.
So she was also mentioned by Ramu, and I'm glad that he mentioned about you, and you're here, and thanks for doing this for us.
Right.
So like that, do you have anyone else in your mind that you think who could be a wonderful guest on our show, and we could share his or her story with this world?
So I believe Mr. Ramanathan has not come on.
I've been pushing him to come,
Let's
and
do a
he's
petition on
trying
that.
to be shy, and I don't know. So I was telling in the earlier podcast as well. So
Yeah.
this should be a platform to tell Ramu and his colleague Noel
sure.
to come, because they have met so many people. They
Right.
will have their own perspective.
And
It would be so wonderful to
it
hear
would,
about that, and we are hoping that he does it someday for us.
Yes, absolutely. And I would like to suggest this couple from Goa,
Okay.
Leonard and Queenie Fernandez. And they're really quite they're stars in what they do.
Okay.
They started the first self-publishing platform in India
Lovely.
called Cinnamon Teal in 2007.
Okay.
And they run a beautiful bookshop in Goa called Dog Ears. And
Nice name.
it's also got a wonderful section on Goan literature and history, and they put in a lot, and they also have used books as well.
Nice.
And they have a wonderful selection. The third thing that they do, which I'm really grateful for, is that they organize the Publishing Next conference, which as far as I know is the only publishing conference in India.
Is it?
And they go to a lot of effort to put that together.
I'm sure it won't be that easy.
Yeah, it hasn't been. And they put together these awards as well, and not just for the book, the author and the publisher, but for the editor, for the illustrator, for the design of the book as well.
Lovely.
And it's when we used to attend them in person before COVID, we got to meet a lot of people, from the publishing side, the distributors as well. It was fantastic to finally see people from across the country, because so much of it is just centered around Delhi, right? I mean, we don't get to meet, we don't get to talk.
People from the fraternity.
You
get to learn so much. You get to
and that kind of networking is so important in what we do, and those opportunities are super rare. So conferences like the one that they put together beautifully is really lovely. So it would be fantastic to have them, talk to also, because they are in the printing in terms of self-publishing, and the kind of books that they choose to bring out also as publishers is wonderful. So it would be great if you could.
I would love to connect with them. I'll take their contacts from you, and
I will do that.
Sure.
Super.
Thanks. And it's like you have done this podcast with us. And how are you finding it? How was the experience about doing this podcast with us?
I think it's too short. I think we should make it longer. No, the reason is not because of me sitting here and I can chatter forever, but I was watching the other podcast that you did, and there's so much wisdom. I mean, even though we're not printing directly, I mean, some of it affected by it too.
Correct,
I mean,
correct.
we are, let's say, recipients of the best of printing, because we see the books in our hand.
Correct.
And we don't see what happens behind the scenes in that way.
Correct.
For us, it's publisher, editor, illustrator, author, but the printer and the binder, and look at that wonderful gold, overlay that you
the
see
design,
in some books.
the spine, as you said, weaving stories in the spine, which connects one copy to the other, or one volume to the next.
I wish we had more conversations. I wish there were more platforms, like this, or like deeper resources that we could use to connect with each other and kind of learn more. So my feedback would be, please do more.
That's the whole idea in terms of getting people from different sections in this industry. You come from books, and there have been people from stickers and bookbinding and so on and so forth. So wherein there are different perspectives, and we could probably now I totally agree that we are at the very superficial level in terms of the conversation. In terms of going deeper into more strategic subjects of particular topics can also be looked at, but the whole idea is about starting, because this kind of and with people listening to podcasts these days while they're walking, they're exercising, and I think it's a good way for people to learn about this industry and gain more knowledge, and that was the whole idea of doing it.
No, thank you for starting this off. I mean, it's a very, very valuable resource, and we need you to do more. So,
thanks.
Best of luck.
Really appreciate you coming, and thanks for doing this for us. It was wonderful, and I learned a lot, and especially the curated
it's
books.
an honor to be here. Thank you so much, and my gratitude to Mr. Ramanathan as well for putting us in touch with each other.
That's all credit goes to him that we get to meet.
Right. So thank you, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. Thanks. I really appreciate. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.